Welcome, dear listeners, to Whispers in the Dark, where shadows tell stories and the night breathes secrets. I'm your guide through the unknown, your storyteller in the silence, weaving tales that will haunt your thoughts long after the last word fades. Here, we embrace the eerie, the unsettling, the stories that lurk just beyond the edge of the firelight. So settle in, dim the lights, and listen closely. The darkness has something to say. The off-season episode from Whispers in the Dark podcast is now here, and it's one that will haunt you long after the final whisper fades. So let's begin this special tale. The Blackened Guardian. Eldergrove Park had once been a place of laughter and lace-curtained picnics. In its prime, families would gather under the yawning willows and feed breadcrumbs to ducks that glided like ghosts over the mirror-still lake. But that was a long time ago. These days, it was a place of silence and suspicion. The air felt heavier here, like the trees themselves were listening. At the center of the park, just off the winding gravel path, was a crooked iron bench that sat beneath an ancient yew tree. Its paint had long since chipped away, revealing rust like dried blood in the metal seams. And on that bench, without fail, the old woman sat. She wore the same thing every day, a tattered grey coat with buttons that no longer matched, and a faded green scarf knotted too tightly around her paper-thin neck. Her hands were speckled with liver spots, her fingers crooked like snapped branches, always clutching something invisible in the air as she whispered to the empty space beside her. People had started calling her Mad Maggie. No one remembered when she'd first appeared, only that she was always there. The sun could be blistering, or the rain could pour like morning tears. Still, Maggie would be there, lips moving, eyes clouded, always talking, always to something that wasn't there. And yet, it was clear she believed something was listening. She never asked for food, never responded when people spoke to her. But if anyone laughed at her, or worse, if they insulted her, they never laughed again. The first incident. It began with a boy, 14 years old. His name was Darren Wilkes, a skinny, sharp-tongued little bastard with more venom than wit. One day he walked past the bench with his friends, snickering. "She's not talking to anyone," he sneered loud enough for her to hear. "She's barking mad." The others laughed, emboldened. Maggie didn't move. She just stared straight ahead, her mouth muttering something low and rhythmic, something almost chant-like. Darren stepped forward, emboldened by his friend's goading. "Oi, who you talking to, you crusty old witch? Your imaginary cat? Your ghost boyfriend?" Still, she said nothing to him, but her head turned, barely, and her eyes, cloudy and pale as misted glass, locked onto him for just a second. He stopped laughing. Something had shifted in the air, sudden and wrong, like the oxygen had been replaced with rot. The temperature dropped, as if all the heat had been sucked away. Even the birds stopped singing. Darren blinked, shrugged it off, and walked away. That night, he didn't come home. The police found him 3 days later, hanging upside down from the rusted remains of the old ranger tower near the lake. His stomach ripped open, entrails spooling onto the wood like wet ropes. His tongue had been cut out and nailed to the railing beside him. His eyes were missing, the only other thing left behind. Tiny hoofprints burned into the wood in a black, tar-like substance, circling the body like something had danced in glee. The case was never solved. More deaths. It didn't end there. A middle-aged jogger, Lauren Holloway, complained about that creepy old bitch blocking her path near dusk. She shoved Maggie's shoulder as she passed, muttering something about nursing homes and rotting in peace. That night, Lauren's home burned to the ground. When the firemen found her, she was still alive, barely, trapped in her bathtub, with both arms melted to the porcelain from the heat. Her mouth had been ripped open ear to ear, cheeks flayed back to the bone like a hideous grin. She died before she could speak a word. The forensic team couldn't explain the deep black claw marks on the inside of the bathroom mirror. It looked like something had tried to crawl through. After that, people started avoiding the park altogether. But Maggie stayed. She still sat there, still whispered, still stared at the empty space beside her, like it told her jokes only she could hear. Rumors and dread. The town's official stance was that she was harmless, just a lonely, senile old woman. But that was a lie. Everyone knew something was wrong with her. Children dared each other to run past the bench at night. None did. The bravest boy, Noah Bell, went one step further. He threw a rock at her. The next day, his mother found him in the garage. He'd hung himself, or at least that's what it looked like. But the autopsy found that his vocal cords had been removed first, while he was still alive. The rope around his neck was almost ceremonial, like an afterthought. His eyes were wide open, lips twisted in a silent scream. More hoofprints, this time burned into the wooden beams above his body. The presence. Those who got close enough swore they could feel something else there. An unseen weight on the bench next to her. The grass beneath that side of the bench was always scorched. The paint on that armrest bubbled and peeled, even in winter. People claimed to see shadows moving behind her, even when she sat alone in the middle of the day. Long, tall shadows, with horns. Some said they heard a second voice, a deep, rumbling murmur that never quite matched her lips. One dog walker swore she saw 2 sets of footprints in the frost one morning, one human, one clawed. But she spoke to no one. No one ever got a word out of her. She didn't beg, she didn't smile, she never made eye contact. And yet she wasn't homeless. She always seemed clean. Her shoes were worn but polished. Her scarf was faded but carefully tied. She smelled not of urine or rot, but of dried lavender and something else. Something burnt. The city council once tried to remove her. A polite young man in a blue vest with a clipboard approached her, asking her to vacate the area. 2 days later, he threw himself in front of a commuter train. No one tried again. A sinister quiet. Over the years, Maggie became part of the park itself, like the dead trees or the broken water fountains. Always there, always watching. Some said she was cursed. Others believed she had made a deal, that she was no longer alone. There were whispers of demons, of vengeance, of ancient pacts. Some believed she didn't even age anymore. But no matter what they believed, the locals knew one thing for sure. You do not speak to the old woman on the bench, and you never ever insult her. Not unless you wanted to die in the kind of way that made your soul cry out for mercy long after your body was gone. Emily liked to ride her bike through Eldergrove Park in the early afternoon, when the sun painted the leaves in liquid gold, and the world felt like it was holding its breath. It was her ritual, a way to think, to forget her thesis, her mounting bills, and her loneliness. She'd always been told not to go near the woman on the bench. But Emily wasn't superstitious. She was a science major. The stories were just town folklore, exaggerations passed around campfires and schoolyards. At least, that's what she thought until the day she fell. It happened too fast to stop. A gnarled tree root had erupted through the gravel like a snake from the earth, hidden beneath a thin layer of fallen leaves. Her tire caught it mid-turn. Her handlebars jerked, and she was flung forward, weightless, stomach lurching. Her helmet cracked against the path with a sound like splitting bone. And then, darkness. The awakening. A dull ringing filled her ears as she stirred. Her vision was smeared with motionless branches above her, dancing in soft wind like skeletal fingers. Her body ached, her head pulsed with a heavy throb, and dried blood tickled the corner of her lip. She sat up slowly. The world had grown quiet. Too quiet. The birds were gone. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. And then, she saw it. The bench. The old woman was sitting there, exactly as the rumors described. Draped in that ghost-grey coat, scarf clutched around her neck like a noose of memory. But Maggie wasn't alone. The demon. It was sitting beside her. No one could have prepared Emily for the sight. No one could have described it fully, because no sane mind would want to. It was huge, even while hunched, its back curved like a vulture's. Towering and hulking, its body barely seemed to fit in the world around it. Shadows clung to its skin like lovers. Black, oily, twitching shadows. Its flesh was charcoal black, cracked like scorched earth, glowing faintly from beneath, like a dying volcano's skin, lit by flickers of magma-red veins that pulsed to some ancient rhythm. Two horns, impossibly long and twisted like petrified roots, erupted from its skull, curling back with bone-deep ridges. They weren't symmetrical, one jagged, like it had been snapped and grown back poorly. Bits of dried blood clung to it. Its face was a grotesque parody of a man, elongated eyeless sockets pulsing with orange fire, lips cracked and colorless, peeling like burned paper. When it breathed, smoke coiled from its nostrils. Its jaw was long and full of sharp, mismatched teeth, some far too human. It didn't blink, it didn't move, it just stared straight ahead, as if it was listening. And Maggie, she was talking to it, not to Emily, not to anyone else, but to that thing. Her voice soft and calm, like she was sharing old gossip with an old friend. There was no fear in her, only familiarity. The atmosphere warps. Emily remained frozen behind a tree, breathing shallowly, praying not to be seen. The temperature was wrong. Too cold near her face, too warm near her chest, like the air itself had warped. A scent drifted across the wind. Burned hair, charcoal and rot. The bench's wood beneath the demon's clawed hand hissed faintly, steaming, as if its skin burned through whatever it touched. Where its long legs stretched to the ground, the grass was dead, brittle, scorched in a ring. And still, it sat there, still, but undeniably alive. Emily had the strangest feeling that if she spoke, even whispered, it would turn and see right through her. Her legs trembled, her fingers dug into the tree bark until they bled. The moment then, the demon did something that chilled her to the marrow. It turned its head, just slightly, toward Maggie. Its jaw opened. And though no sound came out, Maggie nodded in response, whispering, "Yes, I know. But this one's different." Emily's heart stopped. It was talking about her. Maggie hadn't even looked up. But somehow, she knew. The demon slowly turned back toward the empty horizon. It didn't acknowledge Emily again. And somehow that was worse. Curiosity over terror. Emily should have run, screamed, passed out, anything. But as the seconds dragged on, something strange began to bloom inside her. A curiosity, hot and irrational, sparked by something ancient in the air. She found herself slowly standing, brushing blood from her cheek and stepping forward. Just one step, then two. The demon made no move. Maggie continued speaking. Emily's voice broke the silence, trembling. "Who are you talking to?" Maggie looked up. For the first time, the old woman's eyes locked onto hers. They weren't cloudy or confused. They were sharp, alive, knowing. My friend, Maggie said softly. He protects me. Emily swallowed. From what? Maggie smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. From everyone else. Emily returned the next day. She told herself it was for closure, for answers. But in truth, the image of that monstrous figure burned behind her eyes like a curse. She hadn't slept. Every shadow on her wall seemed to move. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. She needed to understand. When she arrived, Maggie was already on the bench, alone. No sign of the demon. Or maybe it was there, just not visible. Emily approached with hesitant steps, the way someone might approach a sleeping predator. I brought tea, she said, holding out a thermos with shaking hands. Maggie blinked at her, expression unreadable, then a slow nod. How kind. They sat in silence for a long time. Emily could barely swallow, her nerves fraying with each heartbeat. Finally, Maggie spoke. You saw him. Emily nodded. He showed himself to you, Maggie continued. That doesn't happen unless he chooses to be seen. She sipped her tea, as if talking about something as mundane as the weather. Emily leaned forward. What is he? Maggie looked at her with tired eyes, eyes that had seen too much. He doesn't have a name, or if he does, it's one I've long forgotten. He's been with me since I was 12. Maggie's hands trembled slightly as she held the cup, not with age, but with memory. I was lonely, she said. Always have been. My parents were cruel. School was worse. They called me names, spit on me, locked me in closets. Emily's stomach twisted. One night I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. I wished someone would kill them. I remember saying it, not meaning it, just wanting it. She stared into the distance, and something answered. It came to me in the dark. I thought I was dreaming. Black smoke rising out of the corner of the room. Then it had shape, heat, voice. Emily leaned closer despite herself. The air around them felt colder, heavier. I couldn't speak. It looked different then. Smaller, child-sized. It adapts to fear, you see, to what you can handle. But the eyes were the same. My father was the first, Maggie whispered. He came into my room at night. Again. But that night, it was waiting for him. Emily stared at her. You mean it tore him apart, Maggie said, voice flat. His ribs were found nailed into the walls like art. Emily flinched. Maggie didn't blink. My mother tried to run. It found her a week later. She drowned in the toilet. Except, she hadn't swallowed water. Her lungs were filled with ash. She leaned in close, voice like gravel. It doesn't just kill. It makes a point. I didn't ask it to stay, Maggie said. But it did. Why? She shrugged. Maybe I amused it. Maybe I was broken enough to be interesting. She glanced toward the empty air beside her. Now, it punishes anyone who hurts me. Anyone who mocks me. I don't even have to ask. Emily looked around. There was no wind. The trees seemed afraid to rustle. You mean those people that died? Yes. Maggie didn't flinch. All of them. The bully who spat at me. The woman who pushed me. The man who tried to take my purse. Dead. Hollowed. Sometimes twisted into things that don't look human anymore. Emily's throat was dry. But that's not justice. That's murder. Maggie turned to her with a cold, ancient gaze. The world was never just to me. Why should I return the favor? Emily felt something move beside her, a brush of heat, like exhale from a furnace. The demon wasn't gone. It was watching. Maggie stared at her for a long time. You don't seem scared. I am. Then why are you still here? Emily hesitated. I don't know. That's a lie. She was right. Because beneath the terror, beneath the revulsion, something else was blooming inside Emily. Something dark and shameful. A twisted desire to understand, to witness more, to touch the fire and see if she'd burn. Maggie leaned closer, voice like ice breaking. You should go, before he grows fond of you. Emily shook her head. Why? What happens if he does? Maggie didn't answer, but the shadows around the bench seemed to lean in, curling toward Emily's skin like black fingers reaching. That night, Emily dreamt of horns and teeth and laughter that echoed like funeral bells. She woke up drenched in sweat. Her bedroom smelled faintly of ash. On her mirror, there were 3 long scratches. Emily didn't expect the phone call. It came in the middle of the night at 2:06 a.m., a time when the world should be silent, when no sane person makes contact unless something is terribly wrong. Her phone lit up her room with a sickly green glow. Unknown number. Something in her gut turned cold. She answered with trembling fingers. Hello? There was a soft breath, then a whisper. He's yours now. Brittle, fading, like leaves crushed underfoot. I'm tired, Emily. I'm going to sleep soon, but he's wide awake. You'll hear him. You'll feel him. Don't fight it. It only hurts more when you fight. Click. Silence. Emily stared at the screen until it went dark. From the corner of the room, something shifted. Something that hadn't been there before. A dark lump in the corner. Not moving, not breathing, but somehow watching. When she turned on the light, it was gone. But the scent it left behind, burnt metal and rot, remained. They found Maggie on her usual bench the next morning, seated with hands folded on her lap, as if meditating. Her eyes were closed, her mouth stretched into a half smile. But the park workers said the body was cold, too cold, unnaturally so. The bench beneath her was scorched, cracked, charred black, as if burned from within. The grass around it was dead in a perfect circle. They cremated her within 24 hours. No one came but Emily. At the chapel, the furnace room buzzed faintly as the machinery hissed to life. Emily stood at the glass window staring into the fire, and as the flames engulfed Maggie's coffin, something moved in the reflection. Behind her, tall, crooked, horned, its molten eyes glowed like twin furnaces, staring into her soul. She spun around. Nothing. But the room was suddenly too warm. The lights flickered once, and from the incinerator vent, a single breath of black smoke slithered out and wrapped itself around her ankle. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. Emily drove home in silence. The world outside felt wrong. Streetlights blinked in and out like failing heartbeats. The clouds overhead churned violently, though there was no wind. She tried the radio, static, tried her phone, dead. Her hands shook on the wheel. Something was in the car with her. She could feel it. Thick, oppressive heat pressing against the back of her neck. Her rearview mirror fogged over, even though the car wasn't cold. Then the breath, slow, wet, and right behind her ear. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. High beams flared in her rear view. A white van roared up behind her, engine growling like an animal. It flashed its lights, honked, swerved. Emily flinched as the van pulled up alongside her. The driver, a large man with wild eyes and a beer gut, leaned out his window screaming, "Learn to drive, you stupid whore. I should ram you off the road." His mouth foamed. Emily opened her mouth to apologize, then stopped, because in the corner of her eye, in the passenger seat, something was moving. Something was unfolding. The creature rose from the floor like smoke solidifying. Long arms dragged themselves across the dashboard. Its face split open in a grotesque smile, fangs like rusted nails slick with dark saliva. Its tongue, forked and rotten, tasted the air. Its eyes met hers in the mirror. "You are mine now." It didn't speak, but the words echoed in her head like screaming metal. Then it was gone, but not gone far. The demon reappeared, inside the van. One moment, the driver was mid-curse. The next, his windshield burst inward in a spray of glass and black mist. The van swerved and slammed into a lamppost with a deafening crunch. Emily pulled to a stop, shaking, unable to breathe. Through the steam and blood-slicked glass, she watched. The demon stood over the driver, claws sunk into his chest. The man screamed, a sound that didn't end, as the demon dragged him halfway out of the seat. Then the real horror began. It peeled open the man's ribcage like a fruit, snapping bones in loud, wet cracks. The demon's claws tore into organs, yanking free steaming pieces and pressing them into its gaping mouth. Its jaw unhinged, tearing chunks of lung and muscle like jerky. The man was still screaming when the demon reached up and tore his jaw clean off. Blood sprayed across the van's shattered dashboard. Then, silence. The demon turned slowly toward Emily. It smiled again, its teeth red and glistening, and bowed, and vanished. Emily sat frozen behind the wheel for what felt like hours. But when she got out, the van was gone. No wreckage, no blood, no man. Only a burn mark on the asphalt and the faint smell of rot and sulfur. She walked home in a trance, heart hollow, hands sticky with cold sweat. When she entered her apartment, her mirror was fogged over again. Scratched into the condensation were 5 words: "You are not alone anymore." That night, as Emily lay in bed, something crept under the covers. It wasn't visible, but it was heavy and hot. It pressed into her skin, sank into her breath, slid behind her eyes. And then she heard the laughter. Not from outside, from inside her skull. Deep, rumbling, ancient. Something had claimed her. She was no longer a girl. She was a vessel, a host. 3 days later, Emily didn't sleep anymore. Not really. She would close her eyes, but her mind stayed awake. Stuck in that feverish twilight where shadows have voices, and your own thoughts whisper in languages not meant for human mouths. Every light bulb in her apartment burned out the same night. Her mirrors showed movements that didn't match her body. The walls bled. Actual blood, dark and oily, leaking down the paint like veins burst from inside the drywall. And the voice, it never stopped. It wasn't Maggie's. It wasn't hers. It was deeper, older. A voice with no throat, just pressure and heat.
"You didn't stop me. You liked it."
And maybe a part of her did. She hadn't left home in 2 days, but the hunger dragged her out. Dry mouth, trembling limbs, a throb behind her eyes like a migraine with claws. She stumbled into the market near the park. The fluorescent lights buzzed too loudly. The air smelled of bleach and meat. She reached for a basket, and her hand touched another's. A man in a business suit. He looked up. "Watch it," he snapped. Emily blinked, heart pounding. "Sorry." The man spit on her shoe, walked off laughing. Emily stood frozen in the aisle, the blood rushing in her ears like a waterfall. Then the lights above flickered. The air went still, and somewhere down the cereal aisle, something unseen began to whisper, soft and sticky.
"Do you want me to kill him?"
Her throat tightened. "No," she whispered. But it didn't matter. The lights exploded, one by one, Pop, pop, pop screams erupted at the front of the store. Shoppers scrambled like insects as a black wind tore through the produce section. Emily stood perfectly still, and then she saw him. The man in the suit, pinned to the ceiling, limbs hanging like a crucified doll, his eyes rolled back, mouth wide open in a permanent, soundless scream. The demon was with him, no longer hiding, its full form revealed. Twisted limbs, black skin that shimmered like molten tar, spines along its back like knives, a second mouth across its chest, full of rotating teeth. It pulled the man apart, literally, tore him in half from crotch to chest. The sound was like wet wood splitting. Blood painted the ceiling tiles like an abstract slaughter. Then it looked at Emily with affection.
You are my favorite.
Emily ran. She didn't know how she got home. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she never left. The world made less sense every hour. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't blink, but her reflection did. It smiled without her. Its eyes glowed faintly orange. Her teeth were sharper than they used to be. Her nails cracked and bled but didn't break, and her shadow moved when she stood still. It waited for her, in the hallway, in the kitchen, in her dreams. It began to speak clearly now, telling her things she shouldn't know, telling her what people really thought of her, telling her who had laughed behind her back, who pitied her, who would turn on her next. And always the question,
Shall I remove them?
Emily cried into her pillow, but the tears were thick and smelled like ash. When she tried to pray, her mouth filled with black bile. When she screamed, the walls answered in kind, 1,000 voices wailing back. Spring came late that year. The park was quiet. Children didn't play near the pond anymore. Birds no longer nested in the trees. Even the squirrels had vanished. But the bench remained, freshly sanded, unmarked. Except now someone new sat there, a young woman with tired eyes and fingernails chewed to the quick. She sat alone most days, talking to herself, smiling sometimes at nothing. People walked faster near her. They didn't make eye contact. But one afternoon, a jogger made a mistake. He laughed too loudly as he passed. Crazy bitch, he muttered. That night, they found his body in his apartment, or parts of it. His teeth were scattered across the walls like seeds. His heart was nailed to the ceiling fan, still twitching, and no one knew why. But some of the locals had begun to whisper. They'd given the young woman a name, the same one Maggie once had, the Bench Witch. And just like before, the demon smiled.
Dus is met dit zie ze meer leven die maar blijft permanently lives per day well.
Thank you for listening to Whispers in the Dark. If you'd like to support the show, head over to our Patreon, where you can sign up to one of 3 different tiers. Or if you'd prefer to make a one-off contribution, maybe you'd like to buy me a coffee or show support through our website at Buzzsprout. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to stay up to date with new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and more chilling tales. Music written and composed by Roman Ducic. Join us soon for Series 2 with more eerie and frightening tales. And remember, you've heard the whispers, but some doors, once opened, never truly close. If you feel something watching tonight, don't look back. We'll see you next time, if the dark lets you go.